Hey, 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 welcome back to Next Act Ninjas, the #1 podcast for mastering your health and wealth longevity. I'm your host, Rachael Van Pelt, and today I want to dive into the topic of Lifequakes, those profound, often disorienting events that redefine our lives and our identities. They're more than just transitions. They're periods where everything in our life feels unstable and uncertain. But amid the instability, there's also opportunity. Today, I want us to explore how these challenging periods, while undeniably painful, can also be fertile grounds for personal growth, reinvention, and new beginnings. Picture this. You're in your 50s or 60s, life is going on its usual track, when suddenly, boom, you get hit by one or even several major quakes. The empty nest after your kids have moved out, the death of an aging parent, or maybe you find yourself being forced into early retirement or facing a major health scare that shakes your very foundation. These aren't just small adjustments, they're life quakes. They're moments when the ground beneath you feels like it's crumbling. They can be incredibly painful, can't they? But here's the thing. These very disruptions can also be powerful wake-up calls. They can be an invitation to examine your life much more closely, to understand what's really meaningful to you, and to step boldly into your next act. Let me share a little of my story with you. About 8 years ago, I retired from my tenure-track career in science to launch my business. After more than 20 years in clinical research, it felt like I was ripping off my identity like a Band-Aid. I had spent so many years immersed in the role of a scientist that I struggled to figure out who I was without it. It was scary, to say the least. I experienced a real period of grieving as I let go of that identity. I remember wondering, who am I now? Can I still call myself a scientist, or do I have to say that I'm a retired scientist? When do I qualify as an entrepreneur? For a while, I was lost in that liminal space, that in-between state where one identity is ended, but the next has yet to take shape. And it's uncomfortable, isn't it? If you've been there, you know exactly what I mean. But here's the beautiful part. That very uncertainty eventually turned into the biggest period of growth in my life. I discovered new passions, ones I'd never explored before. I became an entrepreneur. I started coaching and consulting. I doubled down on real estate investing. I got my realtor's license. I started expanding in ways that I hadn't imagined. That initial life quake, though difficult, was a catalyst for massive transformation. And I'm not just talking about learning new skills. I'm talking about stretching my mindset in new and previously unimaginable ways. Now, more recently, my father passed away. And shortly thereafter, a close friend and colleague passed away unexpectedly. Once again, I found myself standing at the edge of a liminal space. This time, though, the grief was different. It was deep, it was raw, it was complicated. It wasn't about loss of identity, but rather the loss of loved ones. And it was a harsh reminder of the shortness of life and how important it is to live without regret. I don't know the end of the story yet. It's only been a year, so I'm still deep in it. I'm learning to navigate this period without knowing exactly what lies on the other side. But already, I feel a subtle expansion happening. It's like the grief-induced quake is creating space within me, space that's slowly filling with new insights, new desires, and new opportunities for growth. There's a lot of scientific evidence to support this concept that major life transitions are fertile periods for development and transformation. Psychologists call this post-traumatic growth, the idea that adversity can lead to increased personal strength. It can lead to deeper spiritual faith, more appreciation for life, can lead to better relationships. And it shifts our priorities, doesn't it? Priorities that align more closely with our core values. In many cases, Lifequakes push us to reevaluate what truly matters and to engage more deeply with our own potential. Another fascinating concept that's emerged from the science is called identity reconstruction. When we let go of a role like parent or professional or spouse, we're forced to ask ourselves, who am I without this? While that question can feel daunting, it's also liberating. It's an opportunity to redefine ourselves on our own terms. Psychologists have found that people who actively engage in this identity reconstruction process often experience much more fulfillment and a greater sense of purpose in the long run. So these Lifequakes, as disorienting as they can be, they hold the potential to create something beautiful out of chaos. Now, this idea of transformation from adversity is not new. Think about the impact that the Black Plague had on Europe in the 14th century. It was a devastating lifequake that killed nearly 1/3 of Europe's population. It left societies in shambles. Yet, from this dark period came the seeds of the Renaissance, a time of immense cultural, intellectual, and artistic growth. With the existing social structures disrupted, people began to challenge old ways of thinking. The scarcity of labor, it gave rise to new opportunities, and many of the survivors sought to improve their conditions. So this led to more upward social mobility. At the same time, the Catholic Church's influence started to wane, and that made way for the Protestant Reformation and allowed humanism to take root. So you had artists and scientists and thinkers of the Renaissance like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo flourishing, in part because the constraints of that previous era had been shattered. This period of cultural rebirth, it shows us how even the most harrowing lifequake can be a catalyst for extraordinary growth and reinvention. And it makes scholars wonder what we can expect during this post-COVID era. The same is true on a personal level. Lifequakes can clear the ground for your own renaissance. They can be like a forest fire that, while destructive, creates the conditions for new growth. So if you're in the midst of your own lifequake, if the ground feels like it's giving way beneath your feet, I want you to ask yourself, could this be a chance for something to come together in a new way? I know it's never easy. I know it's often messy. And sometimes the pain is all-consuming. But the beauty of a lifequake is that it can force us to shed the things that no longer serve us, and it opens us up to something much greater, which is why I want to shift to talking more practical steps. Because as inspiring as all this sounds, I want you to have the tools that you need to move forward. I don't want you to just live on hope. Let's talk about 5 practical steps that you can take right now to harness the power of a lifequake and create your best next act. The first thing you can do is start by bolstering your resilience. This isn't about ignoring your pain or just trying to bounce back quickly. The true resilience that I'm talking about is about recognizing the difficulty and allowing yourself to feel it, but gradually building new strength from it. A great place to start is developing a daily routine that grounds you, even if everything else feels uncertain. Now, that could be a meditative morning walk, it could be prayer time, it could be journaling. Whatever you choose, routines give you something reliable to hold on to when life feels chaotic. And don't underestimate the power of regular physical activity. Exercise is proven to reduce stress, improve mood, and boost resilience. Even just small amounts of movement will help restore your sense of control. Second, consider the act of letting go. By that, I mean identifying what no longer serves you and actively deciding to release it. This might mean letting go of old expectations, letting go of a job title that no longer fits, or even letting go of relationships that drain your energy. Write down the things that you think are holding you back right now and ask yourself, is it helping me grow or is it limiting me? I think it's incredibly freeing to give yourself permission to let go of something or someone that's weighing you down. Remember, letting go isn't an act of defeat. It's an act of courage. It's going to make space for new opportunities. Third, find a new guiding purpose. This doesn't have to be grandiose. I'm not suggesting you need to go find your life's purpose. Just find a project that excites you, maybe help someone else, learn something new. Just start by exploring your curiosities. What have you always wanted to try but you never made time for? What lights you up when you think about it? You could take a class, you could join a group, start volunteering. The key here is to shift from focusing on what you've lost to focusing on what you can gain or create. I personally created this podcast on the heels of my losses this year. By focusing on creating value for you, it helped pull me out of my small world of grief. You may have heard the saying, when you feel helpless, get helpful. It really does work. A guiding purpose, even if only temporary, gives us a reason to get out of bed each day. And that's a powerful motivator, especially during a time of uncertainty. Fourth, make new connections. Lifequakes often leave us feeling isolated, but they can also be opportunities to connect with others who understand what we're going through. Seek out support groups, reconnect with old friends, stay open to making new friends. Sharing your story and hearing other stories can be profoundly healing, reminding you that you're not alone. In fact, social support is one of the strongest predictors of better outcomes during life transitions. So don't underestimate the power of human connection. Finally, practice self-compassion, please. It's easy to be hard on yourself during these times, to think that you should be handling things better or moving on faster. But remember, Lifequakes are challenging, and it's okay to feel lost. Treat yourself with the same kindness and patience that you would offer a friend. Acknowledge your struggles, but don't forget to celebrate your small victories. Each step forward, no matter how small, is progress. Okay, before we close, I want to leave you with this. You are not the rubble left behind by a lifequake. You are the architect of what comes next. Just like Europe rose from the ashes of the plague to create the Renaissance, you have the power to create your own rebirth. The colors of your past, both the dark shades of grief and the bright hues of joy, are there waiting for you to create something extraordinary. So pick up your brush, step onto the blank canvas of your future, and start painting the masterpiece of your life. Thank you for joining me today. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need it. Remember, we're all in this together. We're all navigating the life quakes that come our way. So let's uplift each other along the way. Until next time, live well, love more, age less, my friends.